Okay, so in the previous lecture, we had discussed about countable sets, right? Countable sets. Acha, what were countable sets? If you remember, they were finite or countably infinite sets. Countably infinite sets, right? Acha, if there exists a set A, which is which is neither finite, neither finite nor infinite, neither finite nor infinite, what will happen? Such a set is called an uncountable set. So set basically which are not countable are called uncountable. So this is pretty much easy and intuitive. So how can we actually form uncountable sets or find uncountable sets? That is the main topic of discussion in this today in today's lecture. Yeah. Acha. Acha. Let there be two sets A and B. Let there be two sets A and B. Okay, and you impose a relation on A and B which is given by this less than equal to symbol. Don't get confused with partial order. I know it's a bit confusing, but you need to cope up with it. Less than equal to symbol, which implies that A is dominated by B. A is dominated by B. Clear? A is dominated by B. Okay. Now, this further means that there exists a function from A to B such that F is injective or 1 1. Okay. Now, what can we show about this relation? Let us examine some properties of this relation. Acha, it is a direct result from the definition of injective functions that A will be related to A. Similarly, A related to B and B related to C will imply A related to C. Direct definition from composition of functions. So it is reflexive as well as it is transitive. What can we say about it being symmetric or antisymmetric? So basically it is neither of them. It is neither symmetric nor antisymmetric, but a modified version of antisymmetric cases. What happens is that if you have A related to B and you have B related to C, sorry, B related to A, then that implies A is numerically equivalent to B. What was in the case of antisymmetric? In antisymmetric case, you had if A is related to B and B is related to A, then A would be equal to B. Then the relation would be antisymmetric. And if A related to B implied B related to A, then it would have been symmetric. But here what is happening? A related to B and B related to A implies that A is numerically equivalent to B. Numerically equivalent means that there exists a function f from A to B such that f is bijective. Such that f is bijective. Now this is kind of intuitive to understand how is it possible. Okay, how is this possible? Because basically you can show that if A is 1 1 to B and B is 1 1 to A, then there is basically a 1 1 correspondence between A and B. This is basically from Schroeder-Bernstein's theorem. Okay, this is basically from Schroeder-Bernstein's theorem. So Schroeder-Bernstein's theorem. Schroeder-Bernstein's theorem, what does it say? These are elementary set operations or topics of elementary set operations. It says that if you take two sets, A and B, and f from A to B is 1 1, g from B to A is 1 1, then there exists a function from A to B which is a 1 1 correspondence or which is bijective. Clear? So this is basically the Schroeder-Bernstein's theorem, which implies that this particular property for the function less than equal to is true. Got it? Clear? Acha. Acha. Now you know about the power set of a particular set, right? You know about the power set of a particular set. So if you have a set A, okay, if you have a set A, then PA or also written as 2 to the power a. These two are basically denote the power set of a. Power set of a. Clear? What is the power set of a? Family of all the subsets of a. Power family of all the subsets of a. So what we need to show here, we are gonna basically talk about the Cantor's theorem. What? The Cantor's theorem. So what does the Cantor's theorem say? So the Cantor's theorem say that let A be any set. Let A be any set. Then A is always dominated by its power set and A is not numerically equivalent to its power set. Okay. You can also write it like this. A is dominated by its power set and is not numerically equivalent to its power set. Is this portion clear? Got it? Acha. So let's see the proof of this theorem. The proof is pretty easy. Acha. Basically, if you have A as an empty set, then what will its power set contain? Its power set will contain the null set, but the difference between them is that the number of elements in A is 0, but the number of elements in its power set is 1. Okay, I guess you know the difference between this notation and this notation. Clear? So they are not numerically equivalent and A is dominated by the power set. So this is trivial. So for A being a null set, it's trivial. Okay, obvious. Now what if A is not empty rather? So let A be non-empty set. Then what happens? So let X be an element of A. If X is an element of A, okay, then Fx, Fx will be a subset of A when Fx will be a subset of A when. So if we consider a function, f from A to its power set. Okay, power sets are basically what contains the elements as the subsets of capital A. And what is f of x? F of x is basically the image of x which belongs to the power set. Elements of the power set are subsets of the set. So fx is basically a subset of capital A. Is this portion clear? Is this portion clear? So this type of a relation can be easily proved to be 1 1. If you take fx, to be the singleton set x, then you can easily find out that f is 1 1. You can easily find out that f is 1 1. Clear? Now what we actually need to show, we basically need to show that there cannot exist any bijective function from A to its power set. This one is true. This is to be proved. That there exists a function which is 1 1 from A to its power set. But the function cannot be bijective. So let's show that now. Okay. So we are gonna use the proof by contradiction. So let there exist a bijection from A to its power set. Okay. So let G be the function A to P of A. Okay. Is this portion clear? Acha. Now see one thing. Since G is bijective as assumed, so G is onto. Therefore, G is onto. Okay, as assumed. Clear. Now let us define a set B. Let us define a set B such that B contains the elements x which belong to A such that x does not belong to Gx. Sorry, Gx. Clear? X does not belong to the set of images of X. Clear? Now see one thing. If this set is defined and there exists an element B which belongs to the capital set A, then what does it mean? So if this thing is there, then this B will exist such that the image of small b will be in capital B. The image of small b will be in capital B. And if small b belongs to capital B, if small b belongs to capital B, then what does that imply? What does that imply? That implies that small b an element of G of B, which is basically equal to capital B, which is basically equal to capital B. What does this mean? Sorry, not belongs to. Okay, acha, let me clear this fact. So you have defined this set. Now you take an element small b which belongs to capital A, such that G of small b belongs to capital B, such that G of small b belongs to capital B. This is true kind of, right? Because see, the image, see, the function moves from this set to its power set. So elements or images of this particular function is always a subset of capital A, and you can easily find out that B is basically a subset of capital A itself. So G of small b can actually belong to B. Is this portion clear? But if you consider an element of the set capital B only, which is actually, indirectly basically an element of capital A, because capital B is a subset of capital B. Sorry, capital B is a subset of capital A. Clear? So what does this mean? If this is true, so from the definition, what we have, small b cannot be an element of the image of itself. And what does this mean? By this definition, this means that B cannot be an element of capital B. So therefore we get that if small b is an element of capital B, then small b is not an element of capital B. So this is kind of a contradiction. The inverse will also be true. The inverse will also be true. If small b does not belong to capital B, if small b does not belong to capital B, then by definition of this set, small b must be an element of G of B, which is further equal to capital B only. So if B does not belong to capital B, B will belong to capital B. Again, a contradiction arises. So therefore, proved by contradiction that G cannot be bijective. G cannot be bijective. Yeah, got it? I guess this portion is clear. So this much is easy. You define a set capital B, which is a subset of capital A, and the element it contains is given by the relation or the condition that X belongs to capital A such that X does not belong to its image. Clear? Now if you consider an element which belongs to capital A, say that be B, such that G of that image of that particular element is equals to B, image of that particular element is equals to B. Acha, I missed a very important thing. This will be not belongs to. Very sorry, very sorry. I'm very sorry. This will be not belongs to. Okay, please correct it. I guess this was the problem because because of which you people would not have understood this proof. Now I guess you people have understood this proof. It will be not belongs to. Okay, I'm very sorry. Acha. Now, when you do online classes, these sorts of mistakes by pen are often showed to you by your students. In online class, this is basically a major problem. Acha. So basically, what we see is that a set is basically numerically dominated or simply dominated by its power set, and it cannot be numerically equivalent to its power set. Now what is an uncountable set? If you replace the set A by the set of all natural numbers, then what you get? Okay, if A is replaced with the set of all natural numbers, then this power set of Pn, this power set of n, the power set of the set of all natural numbers, this basically comes out to be an uncountable set. This basically comes out to be an uncountable set. Clear? Reason being key, it is not numerically equivalent to the set of all natural numbers. I guess it's clear. Okay. So this was basically the process of constructing uncountable sets or understanding uncountable sets. I hope you were not misled in the previous proof because of that mistake of mine. Please correct it. Acha. Acha, have you people learned about binary sequences? Sequences containing only 0 and 1. Okay, we are going to use binary sequences to prove a very important thing. Clear? Let's see. Acha. So let's say let's say X is the set of all binary sequences. Set of all binary sequences. Acha. And you claim that sorry X is numerically equivalent to the power set of all natural numbers. So basically what we mean is that we need to prove that the set of all binary sequences is uncountable. Set of all binary sequences is uncountable. So we consider a function from the power set to X such that f of a, what is a? So a is basically a subset of the set of all natural numbers. A is basically a subset of the set of all natural numbers. So f of a is equals to chi a. You guess you will know what is chi. It's called characteristic function. It is called characteristic function. Characteristic function. Characteristic function basically, chi a of some value n will be 1 if n belongs to a, and will be 0 if n does not belong to a. So basically this, the value of chi always oscillates between 1 and 0, and hence it signifies a binary sequence. Okay, you can easily show that this function is a bijective function. You can easily show that this function is a bijective function, which basically means that X is numerically equivalent to the set of all power set of the set of natural numbers, and hence it is numerically equivalent. You have one more proof. You have one more proof of this particular concept, which is given by the diagonal method. I'm not going to go deep into diagonal method. It is kind of confusing, but you can easily refer to some book where you can get this diagonal method in details. Okay. And then now, why is this proof important that the set of all binary sequences is uncountable? Suppose you have a binary sequence 1 0 1 0 0 0 1. This is a binary sequence. If you put this as under decimal representation, what is this? A real number? What is this? A real number? What is its range? Between 0 and 1? Is it becoming numerically equivalent to X? Is it becoming numerically equivalent to X? I guess so. It is becoming numerically equivalent to X. So what we can say about this? There's a 0 1 is uncountable. 0 1 is uncountable. The range numbers between 0 and 1 is uncountable. Wait a minute, let me drink some water. Is it clear? Is it clear? So basically, real numbers can be binary expanded to form a binary sequence. Real numbers, the numbers between 0 and 1 are real numbers. So real numbers can be binary expanded to form a binary sequence. This was just an intuitive idea. Got it? This was just an intuitive idea. One more concept which comes out from the sets concept of uncountable set is basically, under countable sets we had learned that countable sets have countable subsets, right? Countable sets have countable subsets. Okay, so basically from here we get that if a set has an uncountable subset, if a set has an uncountable subset, then the set is uncountable. The set is uncountable. So so since, wait a minute, so uh, there's some lagging. Wait a minute. Arey yaar. Okay. So since 0 and 1 is basically a subset of R, and this is uncountable, from here we get that the set of all real numbers is also uncountable. The set of all real numbers is also uncountable. Is it clear? Is this understanding clear that the set of all real numbers is uncountable and not countable? You people might have thought that since integers are becoming countable, natural numbers are becoming countable, so there can be a possibility of the real numbers becoming countable itself, but the set of all real numbers is basically not countable. I guess it's clear. Okay. Okay. So now we will be talking about cardinal numbers. This much will be okay. Okay, to understand uncountable sets. Now let's talk about cardinal numbers. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so cardinal numbers. Acha, what is the definition of cardinal numbers? If A is finite, then the cardinal number of A is 0 if A is empty set, is equals to n if there exists a bijection from A to Jn. I guess you people remember what is Jn. What was Jn? Remember? Wait a minute, guys. I don't know why my computer is lagging from a few days. So Jn is basically, this was not there in the previous video. Why is it lagging so much? Okay, okay. So Jn is basically the set of all natural numbers till n. Okay. This is the definition of cardinal numbers. I guess it's clear. I guess it's clear. Now, let's say you define the cardinal number of two sets A and B with small a and small b. Okay. Achha, let me tell you one more thing. That is, if you have the set of all naturals, then its cardinal number is denoted by LF naught symbol. Cardinal number of natural number denoted by LF naught symbol. This is called LF naught. LF naught. And the cardinal number of the set of all real numbers, or from 0 to a set of numbers ranging from 0 to 1 exclusive of them, or the set of all the power sets of natural numbers. Okay, these are given by C, small c. This is called the cardinality of continuum. Cardinality of continuum. Okay, cardinality of continuum. Clear? Acha. Now let's see something. That is, if you have that you have two sets A and B, you have two sets A and B, and A is basically the cardinal number of capital A, and small b is basically the cardinal number of capital B. Then you can impose a relation on these cardinal numbers such that 1 1 A equals to B implies that I mean A is numerically equivalent to B. Clear? Simply A is equivalent to B. If you have A less than equal to B, then that implies what? That A is dominated by capital B, and the reverse is also true. That if you have A less than B, then that implies that A is dominated by B and A is not numerically equivalent to B. The reverse is also true, greater than B or less than B. If you had B less than equal to A, then that would have implied that B is numerically dominated by B. B is dominated by A. Clear? B is dominated by A. Got it? You can also find the thing that this relation is basically a partial order. This relation is basically a partial order in the sets of A and B. Clear? Got it? basically, these are not partial order actually on directly on these sets. Yeah, not partial or directly on these sets. You can basically show that this relation is kind of an equivalence relation. Okay, you can basically show that this relation is kind of an equivalence relation. You can show that basically if you have, let's say you have A, this is always true that A will be dominated by A itself. The set capital A will be dominated by capital set itself. Also, you can show that A less than equals to B and B less than equal to A will mean A equal to B. Clear? A less than equal to B and B less than equal to A will imply that A is equal to B. Okay, and A less than equal to B and B less than equal to C will imply that A less than equal to C. These things can be easily shown. So this is basically an equivalence relation. Okay, so now if you consider the family of the equivalence class of some capital set A such that the cardinal numbers are denoted by symbols small a, then you can show that this relation is a partial order on this family of sets. Clear? Got it? So I am ending this lecture here only. From the next lecture we will be starting with the real number system. So meet you guys in the next lecture.